This podcast is brought to you by Hoare Chartered Accountants. Hoare Chartered Accountants are based in Galway City and are a leading provider of audit, accountancy and taxation services. For more information, visit hoarecharteredaccountants.ie. Now you're welcome along to the Maroon and White pod. It's Connacht Championship semi-final weekend. Galway play Roscommon in Pearse Stadium at 4 o'clock on Sunday. And the winners obviously advance to the Connacht final where they will play Mayo or Leitrim, and that game takes place on Saturday. Barry, coming to you first, potentially could be a bit of a banana skin this weekend.
Yeah, look, there's a potential for every game being a banana skin. If you don't perform, you come up against a team like Roscommon who really thrive on confidence, and when they get a run on you, they're very, very good. They've good forwards, and the big thing is they'll actually. I think they probably would prefer that this game is in Pearse Stadium to Hyde Park. They've a better. Over the last couple of years, they've a better record in Pearse Stadium. So, yeah, banana skin. But I would feel that if both teams, look, we'll probably get into this. We don't know what the situation is with injuries, but if both teams are able to put out to near their full teams, are as close to 100% of their personnel as possible, and both teams play at capacity, then Galway win. But I suppose it's the unknowns that we don't know until Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock that will dictate that. But for me, looking at it from the outside, looking at it, I would see Galway being favourites, and rightly so.
They obviously are like favourites going into this one at the minute, Cathal. But this game could have the potential to be an absolute cracker when you look at both teams this weekend.
Yeah, it really could, and particularly with the new rules and the two sets of forwards that we're going to see on Sunday. I think definitely it has the makings of being a really good game from a neutral point of view. Roscommon probably in a little bit of an unusual situation in that there seems to be kind of an air of negativity around things there, despite the fact that they were in a league final and they got promotion back to Division 1. And then Galway started the league so well and didn't finish it quite as well as they might have liked. But I think Galway's still in a very good position. I watched a good bit of their game against New York, and at times when they needed to be, I think they turned the heat up there when they needed to, and still without some very key personnel. But yeah, coming back to your point, Paul, lots of good forwards going to be on show. I hope the weather will be okay on Sunday, and obviously the pitches have hardened up with the decent weather over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully all of that, in together should make for a very good game. But I would agree with Barry that if Galway play to the level that we know that they can play to, I think they still might just have a little bit too much for Roscommon.
On the injury front, let's just get it out of the way first, because when you come to Galway, there's always going to be this speculation. Shane and Damien didn't play against New York. Maybe there was talks around the county that it was obviously AstroTurf, and then we see John Mayer pick up an injury like that. We go to Roscommon. Dara Craig didn't play the league final. Brian Stack didn't play the league final either. Niall Daly looks like it's going to come too soon for him this weekend. So it's hard to know in that way, Barry, which way both of these teams are going to line up this weekend.
Yeah, I would say we take the New York game technically with a pinch of salt. Anyone that has kind of that soft tissue, maybe a strong history of injury, probably doesn't play those games. And if the AstroTurf situation, you also have, kind of the preparation for the game in terms of the flight over and all that sort of stuff. So I don't think Shane or Damien, 100% fit or not fit, we're going to play that game. And I suppose you could take Conor Gleeson into it as well. We don't know where he lies, but from what I've heard during the week, John Maher seems to be really in contention, but that maybe Shane or Damien mightn't just have been as straightforward as resting them against New York. I don't know that 100%, but it's what I've heard. But you take everything like that with a pinch of salt. The John Maher one is huge. Maybe go back 3 years, we would have always sat here, Paul, and spoke about Damien and Shane, and if we didn't have them, now realistically John Maher is probably the linchpin of that Galway team. What he brings, and I've said this here before, it's not just what he brings in terms of fielding or anything like that. It's just his energy around the place. Like everybody feeds off it. Like I gave this example against Donegal. Shane kicked that free off his left on the ground into the teeth of a wind, like a bit of individual brilliance that you very, very rarely see. And it got a massive, massive lift from the stand and a massive roar from the crowd. But about 10 minutes later, John Maher got a brilliant block where he worked and worked and worked. And that created more energy in the stand than Shane's bit of individual brilliance. And that's what teams are looking for, or what supporters are looking for. It's just that honesty of effort. And John Maher brings that in abundance. And he lifts everyone around him.
As John became Galway's most important player?
Well, he's up there. Like it depends. It depends on, like, you can't, I suppose, pigeonhole everyone into one particular aspect of it. Like, you know, if you're looking for it, I think Sean Kelly, his form has been absolutely outstanding as well, and he's obviously hugely important to us. I think we need Shane or Damien. We need one of them. They're really, really important to us. But I said, if you're just looking for that energy that everybody speaks, you know, you're down in Limerick now. If you listen to a John Kiley, if you're at a John Kiley interview, like I've referenced this before. I remember previously, I think it was an All-Ireland semi-final, he did a 12-minute interview. No, he did an 11-minute interview, and he referenced the word energy 12 times. And that's what they're looking for. And John Maher does that, and he does it with absolute, there's no one in the country that does it to the level that he does it.
I think from a Roscommon perspective as well, Carl, it's probably vital for them to have Brian Stack because he is the go-to man, and he's always been the go-to maker. He's usually, when Galway played Roscommon, been the man to pick up Shane Walsh as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and he's one of the best defenders that's probably out there in the country. But if you look around Roscommon's team in general, like there are a lot of big names there and guys that are well capable of playing at a really, really high level. When you look, the two Murthas are involved now. Kieran is back in. You've got the two Smiths, and Enda Smith, I would say, on his day is one of the best players, certainly in the province, if not the country. Ultan Harney came on in the second half of the league final up against Monaghan. I think Roscommon's midfield pairing, Eddie Nolan and Keith Doyle, is outstanding, and Ben O'Carroll then has emerged as probably one of the best young forwards in the country. And then you add in the likes of Stack there as well. John McManus is back at the back as well. David Murray's a really experienced defender. They've got a team that's really littered with quality, Roscommon do. Now, I think, again, to come back to our earlier point, that Galway probably do have a slight edge there too in terms of quality, and well established as a Division 1 team, and they've contested 2 All-Ireland finals in the last 3 years. But Roscommon have plenty of talent themselves and are well capable of playing a really good brand of football. I think for Roscommon, obviously, there's 2 aspects to the Shane Walsh and Damien Comer thing, if he does play for Roscommon, who are probably coming in as a little bit of underdog status attached to them, is that if they can quieten Shane Walsh if he starts, and if they can quieten Damien Comer if he starts, that just gives Roscommon a small bit of energy from winning or maybe even breaking even in a tussle like that at the back. That generally an underdog thrives on that sort of stuff, as well as kicking scores down the other end, is maybe winning a ball or 2 off Shane Walsh, or a dispossession or a turnover. You know, you see that in hurling all the time. The teams love turnovers, and same in football now, and particularly on the transition, if you can punish a team with a score off a turnover, it's nearly like 2 points. So yeah, I think the Walsh Stack matchup, if it does happen, would be huge. So Stack will be a big player for Roscommon, yeah.
Last week on the pod, I predicted the Galway team alongside Enda Daly and Sean O'Donnell to start this game. I'll just name out this team that we predicted to start last week, and you can both come in whether you agree or disagree with me here. But the team we went for was Conor Gleeson in goals, a full back line of Johnny McGrath, Sean Fitzgerald, Liam Silk, half back line Dylan McHugh, Sean Kelly, Keane Hernan, midfield John Mayer and Matthew Tierney, half forward line Matthew Thompson, Paul Conroy, Killian McDade, and inside Robert Finnerty, Damien Comer, and Shane Walsh. Now, this is obviously we're picking this team based on if everyone is fit this weekend, which we obviously don't know yet. But agree or disagree there?
I'll jump in. And this, like, I'm going to be accused of having Clare Galway tinted glasses on, but for me, I can't see how Jack Glynn isn't. No, look, I'm not a trainer, and I don't know what form is like or anything like that. To me, Jack Glynn is in the team all day long, and I think even if we're looking against Kerry, where we were under real pressure at the back, I thought when he came on for the 20 minutes he was on, I thought he was really, really good. I thought he was composed. He broke lines. He was good on the ball. And for me, he starts ahead of Keane Hernan. I don't think Keane has enough done. Brilliant footballer, great attitude, great lad. I think Jack Lynn starts there, and maybe Liam Silk goes to 6, Sean Kelly goes to 7, Jack Lynn goes to 4. Who had the midfield, did you say?
Matthew Tierney and John Mayer.
And no Paul Conroy.
Paul Conroy at 11.
So Matthew Thompson, Paul Conroy, no Keane Darcy.
Yeah, that was the name that I was going to say, is Keane Darcy. Would he be
No
in with
Keane
a shout?
Darcy. I think leave one at the midfield on the bench to come in.
Who did you say picked that team?
With Sean O'Donnell and the Daily. Now,
Don't be passing the book, Paul.
well, I
went to
probably had the last call.
print.
Me having the last say here.
You went to print on that one, so that's
Yeah.
your call. And I think being fit, I think Keane Darcy starts as well. I think they're, I think Keane Darcy, Killian McDade, maybe possibly I would put Killian to midfield, and put Matthew Tierney in the forwards. But like you're interchanging. But yeah, I would see Keane Darcy starting, and I would see Jack Lynn starting ahead of Matthew Thompson and Matthew Thompson and Keane Hurlan. Carl Sweeney, obviously, I think is rightly in the mix as well, and obviously Daniel O'Flaherty. So we've loads of options. But for me, I just think, again, like, you preface all of this, everything that we say, like, we don't see them at training, we don't know what's going on, we don't know who's playing well, who's not playing well. But if you're looking at it from the uneducated eye, like, I would have Jack Lynn on that team all day long. Yeah.
Just on it, do you not think if we don't have Matthew Thompson in the team at the minute, because he's a player, obviously played well against New York, and I know that, but like, he still got 1-3. Do you not think we need a player in there with more scoring power? Because against the Kerry game, I thought we probably had a half forward line of physicality, but not a half forward line where you could get enough scores from.
Yeah, there's definitely that argument to be made, but I think, like, against New York or against Kerry, like, we didn't have Damien or Shane. So you're throwing in Damien and Shane, who are 2 out now scorers. You then have, like, John Maher chip in with scores, Paul Conroy will chip in with scores, Rob Finnerty, Damien, Shane, and who did you say was you had 15? You'd Killy McDade can get scores. So I think we've 3 in Rob, Damien, and Shane. You've 3 out now scorers, and then you've another 4 or 5 lads who will chip in with them. So I don't think you're looking at anything dramatic. And in fairness, Roscommon, what they do have is physicality. So I think that's what Keane will I suppose shore up that side of things as well. And I do think just on, we say, if we're going a scoring thing, like, I would say one area that I think Roscommon are struggling on is defensively. I thought against Monaghan in the league final, I thought they looked at sea at times at the back. Now, I know it was in Croke Park, but if you're looking back to their scores, like, I think they conceded 119 against Westmeath. They conceded 218 against Meath.
126 against Monaghan.
126, yeah. So, like, they're conceding big scores. So I think at the back.
And I think if you look at the 2 cornerbacks as well, Colm Neary and Niall Higgins, like, they're not that experienced when it comes to intercounty football either.
Exactly. So I just feel that at the back, I think Galway will be able to get enough scores. As you said when you said the team, that's providing all of those lads play. If they don't, Matthew Thompson will have to play. But for me, if everybody plays, I think Keane Darcy starts.
How would you see the team called?
Yeah, well, Darcy was the one that jumped to mind there for me, for 2 reasons. Probably one, his physicality with Roscommon been quite good around the middle, and 2, he scored 3 points in the All-Ireland final, I think, last year. So he has the capability of getting up there and scoring. But I suppose what stands out to me, lads, when you're talking about that, me from a neutral viewpoint, is the unbelievable quality and depth that Galway have developed when everybody is fit. It's unbelievable, really, when you think about it there, and you've listed out the forwards, like, really heavy scorers if they do get enough possession. And Shane Walsh, Comer, Matty Tierney can rotate in and out off the edge of the square if you want. He can play probably anywhere in the top 8 positions. And then at the back, Galway have been quite well drilled over the past couple of years, and they've got the potential to hurt it from there as well, with Sean Kelly with his runs from deep. So, Galway are in a really, really strong position if they get everyone fit and available. And we saw flashes of Comer in Croke Park that night when he looked really sharp when the ball got into him. And if I'm to stand back and look at the new rules and the teams that are suited to the new rules, Galway are definitely close to the top of the pile there in terms of teams that are suited to the new rules. And from a Roscommon point of view, defensively, you're right in what you say about them being quite porous defensively over the course of the spring. And they probably have a decision to make, particularly if there's a wind in Salt Hill at the weekend for this game, is that, how you defend Barry. You probably have a better insight than I do on that. But, I suppose you've got to try and push out on Galway a small bit because they've got the long range shooters in Conroy and Walsh if he comes on the loop and guys like that. That'll obviously leave space inside, maybe for those two cornerbacks that you mentioned, Paul, maybe a little bit more exposed than they might otherwise have been under the old rules. So I think either way, the new rules kind of suit Galway depending on how the teams defend against them.
Would you, if in this situation, Carl, what do you think is the advantage? Do you go with the breeze in the first half or the second half?
I think you go with the breeze and you get your scores on the board. I really think that's the best way to go because you can never guarantee anything. And it was the league game in Salt Hill, wasn't it, that Galway went so far ahead of Donegal and there was no way back. And I suppose teams are figuring out ways to manage the game, even with the 3-up rule and stuff like that when they do have leads. So I think Galway are, they're pretty well drilled in that. But I would definitely go with the breeze if you can. And particularly in Galway's case, when you're kind of favourites going into the match, I think once you get ahead and maybe psychologically that kind of is detrimental to Roscommon as well if Galway do manage to get ahead and kick those 2-pointers in the first half. So certainly I would think going with the breeze, if there is one on Sunday, will be the way to go.
Just from looking back at the previous meetings, Barry, like we've beaten Roscommon the last 3 times. It's 2019 since they've last recorded a victory over us in championship. But I suppose before 19, we were well aware of Roscommon coming to Pearse Stadium and upsetting the odds. But it does show in one way that probably poor Joyce in his term, he has had the upper hand on Roscommon.
Yeah, they've had the upper hand on everyone in Connacht, to be fair. I don't think Roscommon are an outlier in that one. And Galway are a confident team and they'll fully expect, they're not arrogant, they're not cocky, but they expect that they'll beat Roscommon on Sunday. And they'll kick on to a Connacht final, absolutely. Back to Carl's point in terms of defending. So again, if you're looking at Roscommon, I think Galway have a big advantage here. If you look at Roscommon's last 3 league games, now you take the London game as an outlier. Don't take that into account. You look at their last 3 league games, they kicked 3 3-pointers in total. Sorry, 3 2-pointers in total. They didn't kick any against Monaghan. I think they kicked 1 in their last league game against
Westmeath, wasn't it?
Against Westmeath, and I think they kicked 2 in the one before that. So they don't look like a team. On the flip side of that, if you look at the amount of 2-pointers Galway have kicked in the league, it's off the charts, and we've a range 30. Of players. Yeah, so we've a range of players that can go and do that. So that gives Galway a huge advantage, particularly playing against the wind, where they can say, look, obviously we have to put pressure on at that arc. We don't want to give away frees around the arc. But it just allows us to give a little bit more cover at the back because we're not worrying that they're going to hit us with 6, 7 2-pointers in the first half if there's a fair big wind against Pearse Stadium. Now, yeah, I could be caught in that, and this time next week someone is saying, I thought this fella said they wouldn't kick any 2-pointers. But if you're looking at it, the stats of it so far, it's one of the rules that hasn't really caught fire for Roscommon. And on the flip side of that, they have a decision to make. Do they leave off and say, look, let Conroy and Killian and Shane and these lads kick 2-pointers, but we don't concede goals at the back and we keep our full back line intact? Or do we push out, make it a real contest around the arc, and then leave room inside, where we know Sean Kelly is going to penetrate that line that they have around the arc and create goal chances, or they hit long diagonal ball in on top of Damien and we don't have enough bodies back there. So I think all fingers point towards Galway having the advantages if all being equal and everybody plays. As I said, we don't have Shane Damien and John Maher. That takes away a lot of our armoury. But on the flip side of that, if they do play, I think we've loads and loads of potential up top.
Sunday is a big day for Davy Burke, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Like, I think he made, in fairness to fella now, I thought, he's a young family. It's a fair spin from Kildare to Roscommon, and the opportunity came from last year. like I would imagine, now Cathal might know more about this than me, but I would imagine if he put his name in the hat for the Kildare job, the reality is they would have had to have given it to him. And I don't think anyone in Roscommon or outside of Roscommon would have begrudged him to say, look, you did your time up and down the road to Roscommon, give a bit back to the family now and shorten the journey to Kildare. But he didn't take it. He, through his, he made his intentions known very early, and he committed to Roscommon for another year. One thing that kind of worries me, if I was looking at it from, he's had a couple of coaches. He's gone through a good few members of his backroom team over the last couple of years, and like if you look on the flip side, look at Pádraig, like he has Micheál O'Donnell, Divo, Scan, like the consistency there with him. Yeah, he's interchanged a little bit to Cian O'Neill, and now David Morris is in. But overall, things have been steady, and that's what players want, and that's what breeds that kind of confident mentality when everybody knows what they're doing. Where Davy Burke has gone through a few different coaches, and I'm just not sure that helps the situation.
Yeah, because if you look at it, he obviously hasn't got to that provincial final yet, Carl.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think he's done a pretty good job with Roscommon, and I think there was some talk earlier on in the year. Some of the Roscommon players, I can't remember who it was, that was speaking in the media, but they were talking about considering themselves to be All Ireland contenders. If they got things together now, is the depth in their squad there to sustain that sort of push? I'm not quite sure. But I do think they're a very dangerous team for the teams that are up at the top end of Division 1, like Galway. But Davy Burke has done a very good job, and I think they will eye up the Connacht title. Obviously, has been very important for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it gives you a good route into the All Ireland series and momentum, but also silverware is important for Roscommon, and they've particularly relished getting the better of Galway and Connacht when they did over the last few years. They're a team, Roscommon, I think that really thrive on confidence, and that's why I come back to the point that I was making earlier. It's just unusual, kind of the air that's around there at the moment, and kind of the rhetoric around them towards the end of the league. And don't forget that there are two matches coming in before the London game was the Westmeath match in Mullingar, where they were totally in control and found themselves level at full time when Westmeath stormed back into it. And remember, that was Westmeath's first point of the league. Now, they did play quite well, Westmeath, all the way through, but they hadn't got any points on the board. And then the league final was a bit of it was a non-event, really, I suppose, in that they'd already secured promotion. There was a small crowd in Croke Park that evening, but Roscommon never really got going that night. I felt I watched a good bit of that game. I was there, and they probably never really clicked into gear. So there's probably a small bit of pressure on them to perform here. I think if they do perform, they'll be within shouting distance, certainly with 5 or 10 minutes to go, but they've got to get that performance. But I do think they have the potential certainly to rattle the cage in maybe the top 4 or 5 counties certainly over the course of the summer.
Even if you're looking at their team from the league final, call, like we mentioned Cullinane and Niall Higgins, but you could easily expect, because Ronan Daly to come in there in one corner, David Murray's been filling probably the void at fullback, he could go over.
Yeah.
Then Brian Stack goes to fullback. Then you have a half back line probably of John McManus, Rory Fallon, Dylan Duran. Midfield, potentially you could have Eddie Nolan and Keith Doyle, but it's when it comes to the attack, there's serious decisions to be made. Like the forward line in the league final was Kieran Lennon, Enda Smith, Ben O'Carroll, Kieran Murta, Keane McKeown, Jared Murta. Dara Craig obviously comes back into the equation now. If they want to go and probably match goal physicality wise, you have Canan and Ultan Herney there as well.
Yeah. So I think that the key for them there, probably two things, is number one is primary ball possession, and they're probably well placed to secure a lot of that with the two decent midfielders they have now. They probably haven't come up against, or they won't have come up against a midfield of the calibre maybe of Matthew Tierney and John Maher that they might face on Sunday. And number two, their efficiency needs to be really, really good, because the likelihood is that obviously playing against a Division 1 team, having come from Division 2, they may not get as many scoring chances as they might have had during the course of the spring. I do think that like the midfield battle, and Barry, you've played there with Galway, has become a huge part of the game now again. Roscommon, as I mentioned, have a really good pairing there. And then maybe it comes back to break ball. There has been a lot of, it feels like there's been an increase in the high fielding and catching around the middle, but generally speaking, the break ball has become really, really important over the course of the league, and you'd expect that to continue into the championship. So if Roscommon can service those forwards and they can get primary possession, then it comes down to the Galway backs to see how good a job they can do. And probably do have the edge over the Roscommon back six when everybody's available for Galway. I think they've got a very strong unit there, and they're well drilled under Pádraig Joyce. They have been well drilled at the back over the last few years. So there is the potential, though, for Roscommon to cause Galway a lot of trouble, Paul, with those forwards that you've listed out there. And they've shown in the league, although their defending maybe hasn't been brilliant and they've been porous enough at the back, they are capable of getting quite a few scores down the other end.
What area, Barry, do you really want to see Galway go after on Sunday?
I think if we can transition quickly, I think we'll cause Roscommon big problems. And we have done that in games where when we've got turnovers, and the likes of Sean Kelly just goes, Liam Silk, John Maher, Keane Darcy, these lads, and they just go and power forward, I think we'll cause them all sorts of problems. So I think if we can dictate that pace, so I think what Roscommon would love is that, we get a turnover kind of around that arc area or maybe around the top of the D, and we're a bit lateral and we don't show the intent to really go and hurt them. I think that'll give Roscommon hope and it'll give Roscommon energy, and they'll feed off that. And they'll be able to just drop a guy or two back. They'll wheel back one of the wing forwards into a wing back spot, and they'll sit a wing back in front of their full back line. And that'll give them protection. On the flip side of that, though, is that if Galway get a break and all of a sudden, one of the Liam Silk is carrying the ball and Roscommon are looking left and right to John Maher, Cillian McDade, Sean Kelly, just barreling down the gun, that's going to cause them problems, and it sets a tone. And I think if Galway can do that early, for me, looking at it, I go, yeah, look, these lads they're on today and they're going to cause Roscommon loads of problems.
Do you think we've been too slow at stages in that transition?
You're trying to goad me into saying something here now, Paul. Do I think we're being too slow at times? But that's every team. You have days where it just doesn't happen for you. And Kerry and Dublin was probably 2 games like that. Now, in saying that, and I was talking to someone during the week, like you've often heard, various different people say managers can't tell a team to go out and lose. But if the team knows that they trained on Tuesday evening and Thursday evening and they got absolutely hammered in training, they know their performance at the weekend isn't going to be up to scratch. So we don't know where Galway were in their training schedule for championship. They could have been in a real hot point around that Kerry-Dublin game and it just affected performances and energy levels. That's fine. No problem. The problem will be if that Galway really went after the Dublin and Kerry game and couldn't get their energy levels to where they should be, then we're in with a problem. But if Galway have primed everything to go after this first round of the championship, and really, really take on Roscommon and show them, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but show them what a top Division 1 football team can do, I think we'll be fine.
How would you see Galway matching up defensively with Roscommon this weekend, Carl?
Well, Galway have a very good defensive unit, and I think as a unit and defending like 6 backs and the goalkeeper, and then you bring your 2 midfielders and whoever else back into it as well, I think they're really well set. Now, to run through those Roscommon forwards again, like they do roll off the tongue in terms of you've got the 2 Murthas. I'd be interested to see and to gauge your own opinions on who would pick up Enda Smith and follow him around the place. Is that the sort of matchup that is Sean Kelly detailed to do something like that? I think if you shut down Enda Smith, maybe get him running the other direction. I don't know. Is that a runner, Barry? Do you think, or who would be the?
I'd say Liam Silk. Liam Silk.
Yeah.
Silk will go after him, and has had a good, like, Enda Smith's a fabulous footballer, and we've seen what he can do, but. Like Liam Silk. Now, Liam Silk struggled on Paudie Clifford against Kerry, but I think everybody has struggled on Paudie Clifford this year, just in trying to what to do. But I think Galway will have their homework done from a long way out to say, look, we have someone detailed to go and negate the influence of
If he goes to midfield, it's probably Maher, is it?
Goes to midfield, it's John Maher, yeah.
And then you've got you've got Glynn and McGrath, 2 really good footballers at the back that can do everything for you. They can mark players and they can they can go forward the other direction. Kieran Malloy played, didn't he, against New York? It's like Galway have plenty of bodies there that are well capable of tying up those Roscommon forwards. Now, obviously, the game has become a little looser with the space that some of those forwards will get, and the Murtas have been in fairly good form. They will punish you, and obviously Ben O'Carroll as well. They will punish you if they get too much space and ball. But I think Galway, they do have the edge, I would say, in terms of the defensive personnel that they have available to them. And as I say, that they're well drilled under Porrick Choice over the last few years. I don't see Roscommon having too much joy there. But again, it comes back to if Roscommon lord it around midfield and they have more possession, obviously they get more chances. And I think if those players get more chances, they'll obviously score more because they're still very, very good forwards. But I would suspect Galway will have their homework done, as Barry says there, and will be well capable of restricting Roscommon as best they can there.
Do you expect Johnny McGrath to pick up Ben O'Carroll?
Yeah, that would probably be the one, wouldn't it, Barry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Johnny McGrath will pick up Ben O'Carroll. I think Sean Fitzgerald, if he's fit, I presume he'll pick up Jim Murta. And then you're looking at someone like, whoever's in the other corner picking up Kieran Murta, maybe Dylan McHugh picking up Dara Craig. The big thing you have is if you're a manager and you're looking at your matchups, the problem some teams have is that they run out of players for matchups. I don't think Galway have that issue. So every Roscommon forward, they could turn around and say, yeah, we have someone that we've full confidence in. Will we win 6 out of 6
I think
matches?
Roscommon have that issue though too, don't they? With the Galway forwards, like if you
No,
just
that's
win,
no. So what I'm saying, the flip. So Galway have no issues. Like we're not going to win 6 out of 6 matchups, but we could win 5 out of 6, and then one fella's under pressure. That's fine. On the flip side of that, though, Roscommon are going right. Who's going to pick Shane? That's number 1. Who's going to pick Damien? 2. Who's going to pick Rob Finnerty? Yeah, maybe David Murray will go on Rob Finnerty. 3. Brian Stack will go on Shane. But then you're looking at, right, who's going to pick up Matthew Tierney? Who's going to pick up Killian? And I don't think they have. I think they run out of matchups quicker than we run out of matchups. I think that's, again, a big advantage for us.
Yeah, because even if you're looking at a call, you look at the half-back line, John McManus, Rory Fallon, Dylan Moran. It's probably nearly one of those players you expect that might have to be deployed into the full-back line on someone like Comer.
Yeah, I think McManus might be the man there. He's got experience. I think he's played in the full back line before for Roscommon, and he's a big, strong fella. That's he's developed physically massively and was always a strong player, but probably even more so now. I'd be interested to see if Comer plays. I think obviously Galway will want to get their strongest team on the pitch as quick as they can, and I'm sure Comer is mad for football as well. To get in there, I thought he looked exceptionally sharp in that game in Croke Park. When he did get those 20 minutes or 20 odd minutes in the game against Dublin. And then how Galway play, lads, they probably have different options in terms of if you've got Comer in there, obviously he's a versatile player that can come out a bit too, but if his mobility is still a bit restricted with the coming back from injury and his later start, that placing him on the edge of the square gives you a really interesting possibility of lads being able to deliver in diagonal ball, and he's very hard to mark one-on-one, as you know, and as we've seen. So I'm sure he'll absolutely relish the chance to get that sort of space, and that gives Galway a chance to mix up their game, maybe from transitioning hard and coming from the back with runners, as opposed to kicking it in maybe from angles like that in on top of Comer, and then you can obviously go with your bounce pass in towards the likes of Finnerty and Walsh and stuff. So they've got huge variety in terms of players they can play, and then obviously that gives you variety in terms of the way that you can play.
Just on this, under the current format, do you still see the Connacht Championship not being valuable, but do you still see its importance under the current format of what we're to go on to later in the year?
I would say so. Would you say that, Barry? I would say it's still important, yeah.
I think it's important. Yeah, I think it's important. But I have something that kind of worries me. Not in Connacht, but I think, say for example, Kerry get Clare in a Munster final, and I think with the new rules, it's very difficult for maybe the so-called weaker teams to try and hold fire against these big juggernauts. And I think that we could end up seeing a couple of tankings in provincial finals. Maybe Dublin end up in a provincial final against one of the weaker teams, Louth or someone, and I don't mean no disrespect to Louth, what I'm saying is a bit weaker to Dublin, is that we could see teams really struggle to hold scores, and I think in that sense maybe the provincial championships become a little bit secondary, and it kind of brings the road to a league style format of an All Ireland series that little bit quicker. And what we might end up doing is something like holding provincial championships in kind of, late March, April, and then kicking on with an All Ireland kind of a series league in May and June or something along those lines. I'm not sure that the structure will stay. Look, it'll stay for a while longer, but I'm not sure the structure has a long-term future.
There is something wrong when you look at the structure though, and you see Sligo push Mayo to 3 points, and now you're going to see Tipperary or Clare into the All Ireland series.
Valid point. Yeah, absolutely. It's the nature of the draw. Are Galway going to have to, are Connacht going to have to look at something where they keep Galway Mayo to one side of the draw, a little bit like they've kept Cork and Kerry on one side of the draw, and in Munster gives other teams a chance. I don't know, but I just not sure at the minute. It fits its purpose in terms of trying to find the best teams that are in the latter stages of the All-Ireland Championship. And I think in fairness, like I don't think, you have, like, what are, you've often these headlines where, a player from one of the so-called weaker teams that reality is will never win in All-Ireland, or never win a Sam Maguire, come out and say, yeah, we want to be in the Sam Maguire. Like, what are they going to say? They're not going to say, no, we don't want to be in it. But I think if you gave them the opportunity and you published it, or you really pushed hard and you publicized it and you had really good PR around it, and you had a situation where you could play, the Division 1 and the Division 4 All-Ireland Series finals in Croke Park on one day, and the Division 2 and Division 3 on another day, and you had big crowds, like, I think they'd absolutely love it. Like, they want to be there. Like, remember Leitrim got to a league final in Croke Park, the absolute furore that was around it. It was a huge day for them. And I think teams want to be in a competition where they have a chance of winning it. And if they have a chance of winning it, they want to be playing on big days. They don't want to be just pushed to the side. And I think if that was the situation, so you said to all the teams that would be in Division 3 that you're going to be playing, the same day, same final as Division 2 final, which will bring a full house to Croke Park, it's an easy sell for them.
If we are just getting back to the match call, because I know we have to jump soon, just on this, like, where do you see this match being decided at the weekend?
Where do I see it being decided? Probably, I think just in terms of the scoring power of either team, I think Galway just have a slight edge. And I think that Galway's defensive unit is maybe a little bit further down the road than Roscommon's. And based on those two things, I would see Galway edging it. I do think Roscommon have a chance if Galway are missing some of those key players that we've mentioned, the likes of Walsh and Comer, and one or two others. If Galway are down a few bodies, or if they underperform with those bodies, Roscommon could catch them. But I think if everything is equal and both teams are at full strength and both sides produce performances, I think Galway win by probably 3 or 4 points, possibly even more, depending on how things pan out in the last 10 minutes and whether Galway's condition is slightly ahead of Roscommon's having played in Division 1. That could be a factor as well. But I do think Galway, with their forwards and just the sheer depth of options that they have off the bench, just might grind Roscommon down, even Roscommon stick with them, which I think that they will for 55, 60 minutes. I think Galway should have enough on home soil to see themselves through, but I do think it'll be tight. And I think if Galway leave any room for Roscommon to get at them, and if they slightly underperform, Roscommon could catch them.
And who has been Galway's best performer for you this year, Carl?
Well, I mean, you've got several. I watched Shane Walsh in a couple of the games. I thought he was really good. He's obviously got football under the belt. Conroy has been very reliable, but I was really impressed with Matty Tierney in the few games that I've seen. I know you can't read too much into New York, but I thought just his body language was really, really good. He stepped up as a leader. He was looking for ball all the time. I think he was on a hat-trick, wasn't he, of goals towards the end. He's been brilliant for Galway, I think, and possibly really like quite underrated, I would say, nationally in terms of his impact on that Galway team. He offers Pádraig Joyce a lot in terms of versatility in the top eight positions, work rate, leadership now is coming back into it. He's very good with University College Galway in the Sigerson Cup over the last number of years as well. I think he's a key player for Galway, and I think he can have a really, really big summer to complement the likes of Walsh and Comer, who obviously take a lot of the headlines. Conroy was Footballer of the Year, but I think Matty Tierney is central to Galway's efforts, and I think he's primed now to have a really big summer.
Barry, you still confident Galway get the job done on Sunday?
Yeah, I am. I think all Cahill's points are very valid. If we're caught with injuries, guys not performing, don't bring the energy levels to it, bad day in Pearse Stadium, loads of stuff goes against us. Absolutely, we could see a big upset. But in terms of how we are, in terms of, as I said, both teams play with all their players and play at 100%. I think we win absolutely, yeah, no problem. And I think the defining one for me will be if Galway win, or if Galway were playing with a breeze in the first half, I think we could kick 4, 5 2-pointers, and I think that could put us far enough ahead where it makes it difficult for Roscommon in the second half.
Just on the Connacht title overall, Galway are chasing 4 in a row for the first time in 59 years of JJ and Esther Cups. Under Pádraig Joyce, obviously going for 4 in a row. Barry, you obviously played during a time where it was difficult for Galway to win a Connacht title, and you've played with Pádraig. Do you think this is something Galway are chasing after?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. And if it's Tiddlywinks, Pádraig will go and Pádraig will want to win it. And like that was the thing with the league. That's why he'd be disappointed to say, look, we would have loved to have gone and won that league. And I think that's where he'll have used that opportunity maybe to remind a few fellas that this isn't as easy as just turning up, and that if they want to go and get the success that they've spoken about and the success that they've worked towards, they gotta really, really go after it. Yeah.
Obviously, another game call, you'd expect Mayo to get the job done comfortably.
Oh yeah. I don't think with the height of respect to Leitrim, they've had a very difficult year, and I was even reading comments around that game earlier on about Leitrim kind of already having eyes elsewhere. So yeah, I would expect Mayo to cruise through there. The Sligo pushed them hard enough actually in Castlebar in that match, and maybe had Pat Spillan's palmed effort gone in the second half, it might have been different. But I think Mayo will be fine. They'll be into the Connacht final, and when you're talking about the importance of the Connacht Championship, yeah, it's important to go. I think this Connacht Championship is crucial for Mayo to get some silverware on the board, and probably to right the wrongs that they'll feel of last year of missing out at the death against Galway. So I think it's a really big couple of weeks now for Kevin McStay and Mayo. And we'd probably all as neutrals love to see Galway and Mayo back in the final again to have a crack off each other. But yeah, I think it'll be Mayo certainly meeting the winner of Galway Roscommon in the final.
Yeah, you would expect that they'll get the job comfortably done there. That game's obviously taking place on Saturday, so Galway will know who they'll be playing on the Connacht final if they can get the job done on Sunday. Just on the under-20 championship, it hasn't really gone well for Galway at all this year. They don't come out as one of the three. Roscommon will play Sligo in the Connacht semi-final. Mayo go straight into the Connacht final, and Galway will now play Leitrim in the Connacht under-20B football final this year. It's probably been disappointing, Barry, considering this was the team that won a minor title 3 years ago. Looking at the panel overall, a lot of the players who were on this team had good club championships as well. So disappointing campaign for them.
Yeah, no, look, this sounds harsh, and I don't mean to be in any way harsh. It's also the team that was bet 3 times in Connacht. And I think, Alan Glynn deserved massive credit for being able to kind of regroup and get them going again after those defeats. But they were bet 3 times. So I don't think it was a massive, massive shock that they didn't go and progress. I think the problem is that overall, over the last couple of years, we haven't had huge success at under 20 level, and you need to be producing those lads to keep going, because if you have a dip in quality and in standard at underage levels, it doesn't take long before that kind of manifests itself into a kind of a lull in talent being pushed through to the senior panel. So I think, yeah, look, very, very disappointing. But the overall picture, I think we're going to have to look at and make sure that we're producing talent that's going to try and push out some of the senior lads that are there and improve it as we go along, because every other team is going to be doing that.
It's not all obviously Barry about winning Connacht titles, but when you look at the overall context, like Galway should always be one of the three progressing on to the next stage of the Connacht Championship.
That's the disappointing one. Like, there should be, and I don't mean that in any disrespect to any of the other counties. Even though Sligo, you look at what Sligo have done at underage level and at schools level, they've really got their house in order. But we should certainly be competing in Connacht finals. Look, Mayo are always going to be strong, but that would be the disappointing one, that we're certainly not in the top three that can go and progress for honours, and it'll be difficult to see us kind of getting up for that B final. So look, has to be done, but disappointing. So
did it surprise you, Carl, that Galway weren't one of the teams to get out this year?
Yeah, big time, big time. And memory serves, their game against Mayo was quite close as well. Mayo seem to have really put an emphasis on their under-20 team this year. I think they've had a couple of disappointing years in the last few, and they're really keen to kind of get themselves going at that level again and bring some players through. And I actually watched Mayo play Sligo last night, and I thought they were really, really good. There's some excellent forwards. But from a Galway point of view, when you consider where that team was at minor level, it's probably a reflection, one, of the competitive nature of the football in Connacht at the moment, and number two, the difficulty of keeping things going at underage level with teams. And obviously, that's a time of players' lives where there's lots of change and stuff like that. And it's obviously difficult to bring players through. So it can happen. I don't think it's any fault of anybody or anything, but that's just the nature of these things sometimes. And Galway will be really, really disappointed. They drew at Roscommon, didn't they? And they lost to Sligo in a game they probably should have won. They certainly will feel that they should have won in Markovich Park, and Sligo staged a really good comeback there, to be fair to them. But yeah, it's a really disappointing one for Galway for sure. And I would have been surprised that certainly they weren't in the top three.
Yeah, definitely disappointed, but they have to turn that attention now towards a B final versus Leitrim as well. The Galway Miners are in action on Friday evening versus Mayo at 6:30. So they'll be looking to boost their chances of progressing on as one of the three there as well. But that's all we do time for on today's show. Thanks to Carl and Barry for coming on.